Hey everyone, Cerebral Tackle here. I'm sorry it's been a minute, but as you guys know, I've been having to take care of the wife's health. And I appreciate all your thoughts and prayers. Both of us do. You guys have been outstanding. As you know, I've been promising and teasing a two-part series, kind of a deep dive into the Runyan and Cominsky situation out of Ohio. It's going to turn into a three-part series. And buckle up, because some parts are going to get weird. Part one is going to focus on Runyan and Cominsky themselves. And kind of a weird backstory in all of this. Do you remember back after the O.J. Simpson trial when he was acquitted, how many years later he wrote a book called If I Did It? Well, something similar happened with Runyan and Cominsky. Now, back in February of this year, Jacob Runyan sat down with an interview with a Vincent Grzorek from the Cleveland scene. This interview happened fresh on the heels of their DQ from last year's Fall Brawl. And at this point, Runyan was frustrated with the whole thing, even considered himself semi-retired from tournament angling. He even told the reporter, Vincent, that he was studying for his captain's license. Kind of because of what happened with the Fall Brawl, he didn't know what their situation was going forward fishing tournaments. He said that on December 1st of last year, he himself, Runyan, took his polygraph test with the Fall Brawl. And that a couple days later, Cominsky was also called in to do his. About 5 days after that second polygraph, they were notified by the tournament officials that one of them had failed and they had been DQ'd. Let's go back for a moment real quick. How did these two even get together? Well, Runyan had been making a run at it in the previous few years and had had only limited success and burnt through a couple of partners. Then he found Chase Cominsky. Chase was looking for a partner. Chase had the boat, he had the right equipment, and Runyan kind of fashioned himself as the brains of the operation. The guy with the fishing knowledge, the tournament IQ. So he said they were a perfect fit. He went on to say how they kind of started off slow, but then began to hit their stride and get several finishes in a row that were pretty decent. Well, I've seen lots of folks in the comment section say, no one has that much success in a row. Actually, they do. Anyone who's tournament fished for any length of time period knows that sometimes with anglers, things just click. It happened for me. I started off very slow. Then I hit my stride and I got in the money 5 times in a row out of nowhere as a rookie. So yeah, it can happen. Now Runyan goes on to talk about how being in the bar business, he can pick up when shady stuff is going on. And he had noticed a lot of the cliques in this tournament group, a lot of the politics, and when they started to hit their stride and getting those good finishes, he thought people were starting to get jealous. So now post disqualification, he started to see it as kind of a conspiracy theory. He thought these cliques and these other groups of anglers that were calling him out, had something against him and that the fix was in and that it was in against them. So when the disqualification was handed down, he said, well, now I know we're screwed. Well, even though they were semi-retired from tournament angling, they still found a way to fish that spring tournament. And remember in the Rossford Walleye Roundup, how there was video evidence claiming that they had cheated, but the police department and the prosecutor's office declined to prosecute, saying that there simply wasn't enough evidence. This next part is going to take a little explanation. I've seen some folks in the comment section wondering why they're allowed to take home any fish at all, or why the fish are turned in dead. During walleye tournaments, a lot of times, if the fish are caught out of deep water and there's a vast difference in water temperature between the deep water and the surface temperature where the live well water is taken in, the fish won't survive. They'll die of shock. That's why you see so many dead fish turned in, and that's why you see these fish turned over to the tournament officials to be given to local charities. I bring that up only because it becomes relevant here. See, in the spring tournament, they decided to take their fish home instead of turn them in to the local tournament officials to be given to the local charity. That was considered an odd move by a lot of folks. To already kind of be on the suspicion list of all your fellow anglers, and then instead of letting the tournament officials donate the fish to the needy, take them home. It wasn't a good look, for sure. Runyan went on to talk about how irritated he was getting with the polygraph tests and all the strange questions that come with them. Well, I can tell you, by the questions he was describing, I can guarantee you it was a former law enforcement officer running the test. Do I know that for certain? No. But let me give you a little explanation as to why I think that. See, polygraph tests are about finding deception. Old school law enforcement used polygraph tests for new recruits before they ever let someone on the force, and in investigative purposes as well. The old school way of finding deception was to try to find out questions as if like you would cheat on your wife or do something horrible with a farm animal. Literally, folks, literally, that's a freaking question. All these questions are made to kind of draw out any weird reactions in the individual from a physiology standpoint, perspiration rate, heart rate, respiration rate, that kind of thing, to maybe find out if the person has a, quote, deviant nature. That's what is involved in an old school law enforcement style polygraph test. I think that's relevant here because they complained about some of these same questions being answered on these tests. They complained about how the test took 3 to 4 hours long and they were asked everything under the sun except for questions of like, did you catch the fish? Where did you catch the fish? What time did you catch the fish? Is it strange? Yes. Is it plausible? Yeah. Only because an old school law enforcement trained style polygraph examiner will go into that. There's much different questions from a civil standpoint, from something like along the lines of loss prevention, like I was acquainted with, right? Those polygraph tests are different. 2 different styles. One's called the Wiklander-Zawalski, which is the civil side. The Reed method is the law enforcement side. Anyway, just a little behind the scenes there. So, bottom line is they were getting pissed with the long polygraph tests with all the weird questions, which further kind of instilled in them that the fix was in. They went on to throw a little bit of shade at Jason Fisher, the guy that took over the whole shebang after last year's Fall Brawl. He was a new guy in charge. They wondered why the new rules put in place by him made him judge, jury, and executioner. There's a reason for that. Let me explain. Now, as it was explained to me by the man himself, this whole shebang had been ran like a club previous to him taking it over, him being Jason Fisher. Now, the differences between a club and a trail are very specific. A club requires a lot more participation out of its members. Normally there's rule finagling every year, a rule change meeting, even maybe a tournament schedule meeting where the members have bought into the process and they have input as to the rules, but it also requires them to put in their input. Most of the time, these members also get to vote on the board of directors, who the president, vice president, tournament director are, all that stuff. They have a lot of say in how the process is done in a club. Now in a trail, it's an entirely different story. In a trail, there's the head poobah and the head poobah. That's pretty much it. The big guy in charge can have a couple other folks helping him out, sure. But there's no voting on tournaments and locations, schedules. There's no voting on rules. It's what they say goes. So when Runyan was kind of complaining that Jason Fisher is now the judge, jury, and executioner, that just tells me he hadn't fished a trail before. Because in trails, that's exactly how that plays out. Now you take all that into account and we're starting to get to the money of the situation here. The reporter asked Runyan straight out, what are they looking for in polygraphs? What are they trying to find with these new investigative methods of actually handling and checking fish? Random inspections, what are they looking for? Runyan came out and said the obvious. Deception. They're trying to find out whether fish have been altered, where they were caught when they said they were. You know, deception. And when asked about the whole tampering with a fish, altering it, what did that mean? He had a very, very interesting answer. His response was, if you cut a fish open and there's lead weights in the stomach, well, there you go. What? Did he telegraph their play? Did he just say that? Did he just say if you cut a fish open and there's lead weights in the stomach, well, there you go? Remember at the beginning when I was telling you about that O.J. Simpson book, If I Did It? If I Did It, by Jacob Runyan. There's one other small pathway here that his supporters are going to take. It's that this was nothing more than a blueprint on how to set them up. We'll get to that later on. There's still 2 more segments of this series to go, guys. And stay buckled up because it just gets crazier from here. But yeah, installment 1 in the books. If I Did It. Did they? Probably. Could this be seen as a blueprint on exactly how to set them up? Yeah. I don't think they were set up. You never know, and they are innocent until proven guilty. So, take a break, chill out, grab your favorite adult beverage, and we will see you on the next installment. Until then, you know the drill, guys. Keep it wet.